Hi there, this is Chapter 1, Section 1.5, Latin and Literature. Again, if you're already familiar with the process of logging into our world history book, you can skip this part, but for those who are not yet familiar, here's the process. Go ahead, go to lodausd.net, which is the website of the district, and from there launch Clever, and from Clever Cengage, and from Cengage you log in with your student account, and it should lead you to an NGL sync, which is our world history book. And from there, go ahead, launch the book or open the book, and on the left side you'll see that it is arranged into units, chapters, sections, and the specific lesson that you are looking for. So from this point, you want to go to Unit 1, and from Unit 1, you want to log in to Chapter 1, and from Chapter 1 to Section 5, which is Latin and Literature. And this specific lesson is found in pages 20 to 21, Latin and Literature. This chapter's essential question is, what was the power and enduring legacy of the Roman Empire? So this is the essential question for this chapter. Now, the objective of this lesson is to understand the lasting legacy of Rome in language and literature. Now, there is a rhyme that goes like this. Latin is a language as dead can be. First it killed the Romans, and now it's killing me. So the argument goes with whether Latin is dead or is still alive today. You might not be aware, but Latin is still used, especially by scientists and doctors. In fact, you use Latin words every day. It's one of Rome's lasting contributions. The main idea of this lesson is the Latin language spread across the empire and influences the way we speak and write today. The language spoken in Rome was Latin. Although Greek was commonly used, Latin was established as the official language for international communication, government, law, and trade. It was used for official business from Britain to Egypt. The Roman Catholic Church required Latin to be used in religious services until the late 20th century. Over time, new languages called Romance languages developed from Latin. These languages include French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. Latin and English. Many English words have Latin roots or origins. Examine the prefixes and suffixes listed below. So I will magnify this and see what are the words you can add to them. Now let's take a look at these prefixes and suffixes that were from the Latin influence to the English language. Here we see suffix examples. The ty and ity, like similarity and technicality. Example of prefixes are sub, submarine, and subway. Another example of prefix are re, rebuild, and remake. With suffixes ation, we have celebration and formation. Again, another example of prefixes, we have preview and prepay. And disbelief and disrespect are another examples of prefixes, and me and t, which are suffixes like entertainment and statement. Prefixes here, dis, disbelief, and disrespect. Example of suffixes fy, ify, we have purify and humidify. Suffixes ible and able, flexible and likable. Like the girl doing yoga on this page. These are just few examples on how Latin influenced the English language. Now let's go to oratory, poetry, and philosophy. So obviously these are three big words that students like you need to understand to appreciate the influence of the Roman Empire not only to military, engineering, but also in literature. Now, to better understand how this language is very influential to oratory, poetry, and philosophy, I would like you to watch this video that I found from the School of Life, and I think it provides a lot of useful information and animation for you to better understand.
Latin sentences and sayings seem to be designed to be carved out of stone. This is a matter of their concision and weightiness. Because of its highly inflected grammatical structure, Latin uses far fewer words to express something than a non-inflected language such as English. Here are some of our favourite Latin sayings. Veni, vidi, vici. Julius Caesar's most famous remark, apparently made in the Roman Senate in 47 BC and referring to his victory over King Pharnaces II of Pontus at the Battle of Zela, is an example of Latin at its most concise. English takes twice as many words to convey the same meaning. The English translation doesn't come close to matching the patterned terseness, those alliterative V's, those final long I's of the original. Requiescat in pace. One of the most familiar of all Latin sayings is unusual in not being notably more terse than the English equivalent, but here the weightiness and solemnity of Latin come to the fore. The big words have a sort of baroque splendour, and strictly speaking this is more succinct, or conveys more meaning in the same number of words than the English equivalent, because the Latin word requiescat is a subjunctive and represents a pious wish. May he or she rest, not a simple command. Carpe diem. The famous saying from the 11th poem of Horace's first book of Odes is possibly the best known Latin tag of all. It's certainly the one which has inspired the naming of more restaurants and wine bars than any other. Why is it so memorable, and why does it work so well in Latin? For a start, it has the classical Latin succinctness. Just two balanced syllables to convey a whole world of meaning, even an entire philosophy, in this case the philosophy of Epicureanism. There is also the weightiness, especially in the second word. A Latin dies is more significant than a mere English day. And finally, this poet's saying has a marvellous poetic ambiguity and richness, as the word carpe can mean so many different things, from seize to pluck. Homo sum, humani nil a me alienum poto. This saying from the early Roman comedian Terence is genius for plain eloquence. The English version is 50% longer in terms of words and nothing like as memorable, especially when it comes to word order. The ability to manipulate word order is a great advantage that Latin gains from its grammatical inflections. The way nouns and adjectives incorporate their own cases and verbs include person, mood and tense within a single word. Here, being able to hold back the verb to the end of the sentence enables Terence to juxtapose the homo sum with the humani nil. Parturient montes, nascetur ridiculus mus. Here, from Horace's Ars Poetica, his hugely influential treatise on how to write, is a lovely example of Latin being playful, as it were using its own weightiness against itself. Latin is able to enact the process whereby huge effort, the mountains going into labour, produces a laughably puny result, the birth of the minuscule, unimpressive rodent. Capax imperii nisi imperasset. The master of the witheringly terse put down in Latin, or maybe in all languages, is the Roman historian Tacitus. This marvellous four-worder refers to the Emperor Galba, but could be seen as an equally fitting epitaph on at least one recent British Prime Minister. Here, both succinctness, enabled by grammar, and the unique Latin weightiness find a perfect expression. Caelum non animum mutant, qui transmare currunt. Another Horatian gem, this time from his first book of epistles, depends once again for its memorable force on the genius of Latin grammar, the way the accusative tense is signalled in the final ums of caelum and animum, so that the contrast between the climate or colour of the sky, caelum, which the traveller can change, and her state of mind, animum, which the traveller can't alter so easily, is pointed up with the maximum impact. Latin, more than any other tongue, is the language in which things are not just said, but stay said. The tight grammatical structure of the language helps give Latin sayings a massive architectural grandeur, the verbal equivalent of the Colosseum, the Pantheon, or the Pont du Gard. Like those great edifices, they are built to stand the test of time.
Okay, finally, philosophy. So Roman philosophy was another extension of Greek ideas. What is the definition of philosophy? It is the study of reality, knowledge, and beliefs. In other words, it's just the study of life in general, how we think, how we live our lives. Of course, I'm oversimplifying it, but you will have a lot of chance to learn more about philosophy when you get into college. Now, before we go to the review and assess questions, remember at the beginning of this lesson I mentioned about the argument whether Latin is dead or is still alive. So some experts are claiming that it is well, healthy, and of course alive. Others are saying it's dead. It's only its remnants that is in different language or various languages that are existing. The Roman Catholic Church played an important role in the preservation of the language, which will be covered in lesson 2.4. But before that, I'd like you to see another presentation addressing the argument whether the Latin language is dead or alive. So go ahead, watch this.
In early AD, the Roman Catholic Church dramatically gained power and influence over ancient Rome. With Latin as the Church's preferred language, it too became the language of the empire, which, at its height, was estimated to cover roughly a quarter of the Earth's population. To put that into perspective, today, English is known to some degree by the same fraction, about a quarter of the world. So imagine that roughly 2,000 years from now, nobody knows English, and studying it is an incredibly rare specialty. Today, Latin might not be extinct, which would mean it has no living speakers, but it certainly is dead, as it's fallen out of use as a method of communication. So, what happened to Latin? Well, it didn't so much die as it changed into Romanian, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, and French, which we conveniently know as the Romance languages. Romance for Rome. There are a number of other languages that developed out of Latin, but those 5 are the most commonly spoken. Within all of those languages are Latin roots, tenses, grammar, and other intricacies. And that's not surprising, since all the countries where Romance languages are popular also made up the Western Roman Empire. It was only around the fall of the empire that Latin died and these new languages were born. So why did that happen? Well, mainly because Latin is incredibly complex. It's unique from other languages in that it's highly inflected, meaning that nearly every word is potentially modified based on tense, case, voice, aspect, person, number, gender, and mood. As a result, the meaning is always clear, although difficult to parse in a sentence. It's one of the reasons we continue to use it for highly technical fields where clarification is of the utmost importance, like classifying species or in medical terminology. When the Roman Empire collapsed, each distinct ethnic region appropriated their own version of what was called Vulgar Latin. Vulgar here just means common. While Standard Latin was incredibly useful for description, simple communication didn't have to rely on complex grammar. As we know from different dialects in English, like African American Vernacular English or Chicano English, grammar, word choice, and even sentence structure end up naturally diverging from the quote-unquote correct version. So a Latin word like the number 3, tres, translates into tre in Italian, tres in Spanish, and trois in French, all similar but culturally distinct. Nonetheless, due to the overwhelming prevalence of Latin in early Western literature, medicine, and science, Latin as a language of antiquity never quite went extinct, and today a huge number of technical fields maintain its usage. Even English still uses a huge number of Latinate roots, despite modern English developing out of Old English and before that, Proto-German. According to some estimates, more than 60% of English is made up of Greek or Latin roots, mostly Latin, as a result of English being heavily influenced by French. In the end, although Latin is dead, it lives on in languages spoken by roughly 1 billion people around the world. And as we mentioned, Latin continues to be used in technical fields. So why do we do that, and what are the benefits? Find out in this video from D News. See, around the 4th century, a craze was sweeping the ancient Roman Empire, and all the kids were calling it Christianity. This ultimately led to the formation of the Roman Catholic Church. The church was a huge fan of Latin, largely because that's what the common man spoke, and that was their target audience.
Finally, let's go to the review and assess questions. The first one is reading check. How has the English language been influenced by Latin? And number 2, make connections. What additional words can you think of that include the Latin prefixes and suffixes listed above, the one that I showed you a while ago? And number 3, make inferences. How did Roman ideas about philosophy support the ancient Roman approach to life? It's their philosophy. This time, I'd like you to find the answers yourself. It's in page 20 to 21 of your book. But just in case, in some worst or weird scenario, you are not able to load your book, I will show you the pages or the paragraphs within these lessons, and here they are. Here's the top part with the introductory paragraph, the second part, and here's the examples from the prefixes and suffixes, and here's the oratory poetry, how the Roman Catholic Church played an influence, and of course the review and assess questions. So whether you can access the book or not, it shouldn't be a problem because the information you need is in this presentation already. However, I really want you to use the book whenever I teach you a lesson from the book, because it's very important that you follow along so that you can highlight and copy information and make notes using your online book. Now go back to your Google Classroom and answer the review and assess questions that I posted along with this recorded lesson that you just watched.